everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is another episode of Migraine from Both Sides, and that's our little play on words. I'm here with Dr. Jackie Gardner-Nix, and I'm Christy Tate. I'm a nurse practitioner. We are both healthcare providers as well as migraine sufferers, so you'll get both sides of our perspective there. And as we all know, migraine can certainly affect one side, if not both, of your head. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the impact that migraine can have on someone's life, and we're going to share a couple of our own experiences as well as talk a little bit about this neurological condition and its impact really on the population. Jackie, you have a really kind of profound story in terms of one of your most impactful memories of migraine. Do you want to share it with us?
Yes, I mean, I was training in medicine in Britain, and in those days, and it was a long time ago, we did some horrible shifts, over 100 hours a week, with patients who were unfortunately subjected to us in a very tired state much of the time. And I remember I was coming up for a weekend on call at the teaching hospital where I was doing my internship with patients. We had a leukemia unit, we had a diabetic unit, and so on. So my weekend on call would be from 9 a.m. on Saturday, and I'd actually come off duty at 5 p.m. on Monday, would you believe? And on the Friday afternoon prior to that weekend, I started a migraine headache. And my resident, who was like one above me and who I would report to during that weekend, he would not be in the hospital. I would be in the hospital. And he had this look in his eyes like a deer in the headlights because he recognized that if I was going to be unable to do that weekend, he would have to do it instead. And he rushed down to pharmacy and got me an anti-nausea medication. In those days, we did not have the migraine designer drugs that we have now. But unknown to him and to me at the time, that particular anti-nausea medication, which I took orally, put me to sleep. And so for the rest of the Friday, I was a zombie. I was just walking about like I had no ability to function and had to go home. And he was stuck with the entire weekend on call. He's so upset he was that he sent in an on-call physician to do a home visit to me on Saturday to confirm that I truly did have a migraine. So I wasn't even quite believed, which was quite disrespectful. And I just remember at that time feeling like there was no compassion for somebody who had migraine. It was very hard, really, to function, to do all those hours. But because I was young enough, I didn't get that many migraines and therefore didn't impact my colleagues as much as I might have later on in my career. Do you have an impactful memory, Christy?
Yeah, I do. And that invisibility, just to comment on your story before I share mine it is, I find migraine sufferers often have to sort of validate themselves or, almost defend what they're going through because you can be fine one day, one moment, and this attack can come on that you don't have any control over. And it is invisible and I think underappreciated in terms of its disability. So I have several kind of impactful moments, but it's almost a period of time that I remember that was most significant for me. I was just kind of following the birth of my third child. That child was about a year. I'd returned to work, adjusting to work after maternity leave and having three young kids is already difficult. And my migraine attacks were just kind of out of control. They progressed to being daily, so I certainly was a chronic migraine sufferer, and I was really struggling for several months to juggle all of it and didn't feel like I was doing anything very well, from being a mom to being a nurse practitioner. And then anyway, my 39th birthday, I had gone out for dinner with my husband and I was not feeling well. I was really looking forward to, a rare dinner out, but I dragged myself along. I couldn't eat a single bite of food. I felt so unwell. I excused myself several times. Even the smell of the restaurant was off-putting. We went home. And then the next day, because this particular attack, I remember it had gone on for a couple of weeks and I was just getting no relief. I ended up having to go to the emergency department. I think anyone who has been in the emergency department, I worked there for almost 10 years, you don't want to be there if you don't need to be, and you don't want to be there with a migraine attack. It's really a last resort. And I spent the day there. I felt slightly better, not even, attack gone, because I was in such a chronic state at that point. But it's another place where I think many migraine sufferers end up. And I hear the story a lot from my patients that it's a place that they are sometimes made to feel bad that they're going there for, because it's not an emergency. It's just a migraine, and we know that it is absolutely not just a headache. It takes usually a lot for somebody to have to get there, and they're pretty desperate for relief at that point. And then, we prior to doing this, Jackie, we were talking a little bit about how common migraine is, right? Did you want to share some of the statistics that you had?
Yes, I mean, globally, it affects 15% of people across the world. Now, after puberty, it affects more women than men, but it's one of the leading causes of disability. I think it's the second leading cause of disability in certain age groups, but it's a leading cause of disability in women aged 15 to 49. And you and I, I'm sure, can relate well to that, because there we are juggling careers that we dearly love and kids that we dearly love as well, our children. It's our childbearing years. And we often will feel stretched to capacity. It's no wonder there aren't very many women in positions of leadership, because you almost have to choose between, especially if you're a migraine sufferer, because you have to pace your life. You have to think that much more about what you can get away with, in a sense. And we know that lack of sleep is a trigger of migraines. It can bring on more migraines. And there we are trying to bring up young children and managing careers, and in my case there would be on-call commitments as well. Now, I didn't start having my family till I was 35, and that was because I just didn't feel I could juggle internship, the bit of residency that I did as well. I was also in research for a while, so 35 felt kind of late to start my family, and my last child, my third child, was born when I was 41. But that was almost like an accommodation to having to fit everything in around the fact that I was a migraine sufferer. And you had yours earlier, I think, Christy.
Yeah, I have 4 kids now, and actually, well, I'm sure we'll get into this in another episode, but those pregnancies were my most well-controlled migraine years. So between 32, I was 40 when I had my last child. And I think some of the things we're saying, I hear from a lot of my patients as well, that they're struggling to kind of get through a day. More often than not, a migraine sufferer will have presenteeism, which means you're showing up despite being significantly impacted. Instead of, I think, the perception that you're trying to, fake an illness or fake a condition, which was the case with your experience in residency, that somebody didn't believe you. So almost always migraine sufferers are bringing themselves to the best of their ability to their days, their work, their family obligations. And it really takes a lot before they finally have to kind of throw in the towel, or succumb to having to go to bed, because it's just not an option.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
One thing I wanted to just add in is that you were lucky enough to have what they tell us is more common, that the migraines decrease in their severity and frequency during pregnancy. And I know that it's also spoken of for after menopause as well. But in my case, my migraines got worse during pregnancy. So I was quite disappointed. I actually had complex migraines, in that I would have tingling one side of the face, and some motor tone would decrease, so my face would look strange. I had some paralysis of my arm and my fingers, and they would tingle as well. But I unfortunately knew, because I was a healthcare professional, that those were migraine phenomena. So I didn't panic, and I didn't go to the ER where many people would. And they did recover over time. So sadly, that happened. And after menopause, I know my mother got more frequent migraines, and I did too. And some of my migraines have been complex. I've even had visual loss. So, my body's speaking for itself, telling me to pace myself more as I got older, not take so much on, etc. It was a message coming through. Wow.
I know it's very, and it's what's interesting, and I think we've said this before, that every individual living with migraine has that lived story and experience. It's different for me than you than the other person. So, although we call it all migraine, the way that it impacts someone is different. And our approaches in healthcare, both yourself and myself, we like to get that kind of narrative and full lived experience story because it helps you provide better care that is tailored to that individual person and what they're doing so you can help support them in the right way. And that's really what I think good migraine care should look like.
Absolutely. And also, if we can educate people about what is a migraine phenomenon, they are less likely to panic and get frightened and less likely to go and seek healthcare help if it's, mind you, I would never say don't go to the ER, it's probably migraine if you've got loss of power in a limb, because it could always be an impending stroke. So we have to ensure that people know that they still should go until they find that maybe they can reassure themselves that because it's the third time it's happened, that they can maybe sit this one out. But that will also help just educate people, reduce the anxiety and panic around those phenomena. Okay, let's finish this one, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks
Thanks,
for joining
everyone.
us.
See you soon.